The throne room of the Valeri Empire gleamed with opulence, its walls adorned with shimmering crystal panels that refracted light into dazzling rainbows. At the center of it all sat Princess Lirael, her silver hair cascading down her back like liquid moonlight. Her violet eyes burned with defiance as she stood before an assembly of nobles and diplomats. Today was not just another day of court. It was a declaration. "I would sooner dissolve into stardust than take a human as my mate," Lirael announced, her voice ringing through the chamber like a blade slicing through silence. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some approving, others disapproving, but none dared to challenge her outright. Humans were considered barbaric by most Valeri standards, short-lived, reckless, and prone to destruction. To even suggest such a union was unthinkable. Lirael's words carried more weight than mere disdain. For years, humanity had been at odds with the Valeri Empire, their skirmishes leaving scars on both sides. Entire planets had been reduced to ash, civilizations wiped out in the blink of an eye. And while many blamed the humans for starting the conflict, Lirael knew better. She had played her part too, a role she now buried beneath layers of pride and arrogance. Her father, Emperor Thalric, watched from his golden throne, his expression unreadable. He had summoned this gathering to discuss peace negotiations with Earth, hoping to end decades of bloodshed. But Lirael's proclamation threw a wrench into those plans. Diplomacy required compromise, but how could they negotiate when his own daughter refused to see reason? "Lirael," Thalric said finally, rising from his seat. His deep voice commanded attention. "Your passion is commendable, but your hatred blinds you. Humanity is not our enemy. They are victims of circumstance, much like us. They destroyed 3 of our colonies." Lirael shot back, her fists clenched. "Do you think I'll forgive them because they claim ignorance? No. They are savages, father, and nothing will change my mind." Thalric sighed heavily. He motioned for the guards to escort the other attendees out of the room until only he and Lirael remained. Once alone, his demeanor softened. "You carry guilt heavier than any crown, my child. Do not let it poison you further." Lirael stiffened. How could he know about the battle she tried so hard to forget? About the orders she gave that led to countless human deaths? She turned away, refusing to meet his gaze. "I do what is necessary for our people. If that makes me cruel, so be it." "Then prove yourself," Thalric replied firmly. "Attend the Peace Summit on Earth. See them for who they truly are, not monsters, but beings capable of redemption. Perhaps then you will understand why we must find common ground." Reluctantly, Lirael agreed. Anything to escape her father's piercing stare. Yet as she boarded her royal shuttle days later, her heart swelled with bitterness. She vowed to keep her distance from the humans, treating them as little more than obstacles in her path. But fate has a way of intervening when least expected. As the shuttle descended toward Earth's atmosphere, alarms blared suddenly. A malfunction caused the vessel to veer off course, hurtling toward a remote region far from the designated landing site. Panic gripped Lirael as the controls failed, and the world outside blurred into chaos. Just before impact, she muttered under her breath, "Of all places." When she awoke hours later, battered but alive, she found herself surrounded by unfamiliar faces. Human faces. One man stepped forward, his green eyes wary yet kind. "Are you hurt?" he asked cautiously. For the first time in years, Lirael felt utterly powerless and strangely intrigued. This segment introduces the protagonist, establishes tension, and sets the stage for character growth while maintaining an engaging pace. Let me know if you'd like adjustments or additional details. The alien princess groaned as consciousness returned, her head pounding like a drum. Her vision blurred, but she could make out shapes moving around her. Humans. Their faces were weathered, their clothes simple and worn. One figure knelt beside her, his voice calm yet cautious. "Easy there. You're safe. For now." Lirael blinked, trying to focus. The man before her had dark hair streaked with gray, stubble lining his jaw, and piercing green eyes that seemed to see straight through her defenses. His hands were calloused, evidence of hard labor, but they moved gently as he checked her injuries. She flinched at his touch, pride overriding pain. "Don't touch me," she snapped, her tone sharp enough to cut steel. The man raised an eyebrow, but didn't back away. "Suit yourself, but if you want to survive out here, you'll need help. This isn't exactly a 5-star resort." Luriel glanced around, taking in her surroundings for the first time. She was in a small, rustic cabin lit by flickering lanterns. Outside, the wind howled against wooden walls, and snow drifted lazily past the windows. It was nothing like the gleaming cities of the Valeri Empire, or even the advanced human settlements she'd heard about. This place felt primitive. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice dripping with disdain. "It's called a home," the man replied dryly. "Mine, specifically. Name's Cale Armitage." Her lips curled into a sneer. Cale Armitage, a farmer, no doubt. How quaint. Cale chuckled humorlessly. "Former soldier, actually. Now I grow crops instead of fighting wars. Guess you could say I've seen enough destruction to last a lifetime." He paused, studying her closely. "You're Valeri, aren't you? What's someone like you doing crashing on Earth?" "That's none of your concern," Luriel retorted, though unease prickled at the edges of her mind. If he recognized her, word would spread quickly, and not just among humans. Bounty hunters and Imperial agents alike would descend upon this remote village. She couldn't afford to be discovered. To her surprise, Cale didn't press further. Instead, he handed her a cup of steaming liquid. "Drink this. It'll help with the pain." She hesitated, eyeing the drink suspiciously. "Is it poisoned?" "If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't waste good tea," he said flatly. "Your choice." Reluctantly, Luriel took a sip. The warmth spread through her chest, dulling the ache in her ribs. For a moment, she allowed herself to relax, but only a moment. This man might have saved her life, but he was still human. And humans were treacherous. Over the next few days, tension simmered between them. Luriel refused to lift a finger to help around the cabin, insisting she was royalty and deserved respect. Cale ignored her complaints, going about his daily chores without sparing her a second glance. Yet, despite her arrogance, she found herself watching him curiously. There was something different about him, something she couldn't quite place. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Cale broke the silence. "You know, most people would show some gratitude after being rescued. I didn't ask for your help." Luriel shot back, glaring at him. "No, you didn't," he admitted. "But here we are anyway, so why don't you tell me what you're running from? Or who?" Her breath hitched. Did he suspect? She masked her reaction with a scowl. "I'm not running from anything. My shuttle malfunctioned. That's all." Cale leaned back, crossing his arms. "Fair enough. But if you're lying, don't think I won't turn you over to the authorities. They pay well for aliens these days." A chill ran down Luriel's spine. She had underestimated him. Beneath his quiet demeanor lay a shrewdness that unnerved her. Still, she held her ground. "Do what you must. Though I doubt anyone would believe a lowly farmer over a royal princess." For a long moment, Cale simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, to her astonishment, he laughed. "You really are full of yourself, aren't you? Fine, stay as long as you need. Just don't get in my way." As the days passed, Luriel began to notice things she hadn't before. Cale worked tirelessly, tending to his fields and animals with quiet determination. He spoke little of his past, but when he did, his words carried weight. He told her about losing his family in one of the Valeri attacks, a revelation that made her stomach churn with guilt. Despite herself, she started seeing him less as a human and more as someone who had suffered because of her kind, someone who still chose to live with hope rather than hatred. It was unsettling and strangely compelling. This segment deepens the dynamic between Luriel and Cale, introducing mutual mistrust while planting seeds of understanding. Let me know if you'd like any changes or expansions. The days turned into a week, and though Luriel refused to admit it, she was growing restless. Her royal upbringing had never prepared her for such monotony. No servants catering to her every need, no lavish meals or luxurious accommodations. Instead, there was only Cale's modest cabin, the biting cold outside, and the endless chores that seemed to define his life. Still, something about this simplicity intrigued her. She couldn't help but notice how Cale moved with purpose, each action deliberate and meaningful. Whether he was chopping wood, feeding the animals, or repairing tools, he did so without complaint. It wasn't just survival, it was resilience, a quality she hadn't expected to find in a human. One morning, curiosity got the better of her. As Cale headed out to check on his crops, she followed him, wrapping herself in a thick woolen cloak he'd given her. The snow crunched underfoot as they walked side by side, their breath forming clouds in the frosty air. "Why do you stay here?" Luriel asked abruptly, breaking the silence. "This place is isolated." Cale glanced at her, surprised by the question. "It's peaceful," he replied after a moment. "After everything I've been through, the war, losing my family, I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere to heal." "Heal," she echoed skeptically. "From what? Humans are supposed to be resilient. Isn't that what your species prides itself on?" His jaw tightened, and for a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then softly, he said, "Resilience doesn't mean we don't break. Sometimes we just learn to live with the cracks." Luriel looked away, unsettled by his words. They struck too close to home, reminding her of her own fractured soul. She had buried her guilt beneath layers of pride, convincing herself that duty justified her actions. But standing here now, surrounded by Cale's quiet strength, she wondered if she had been lying to herself all along. As they reached the edge of his fields, Cale stopped and gestured toward the horizon. "See those mountains? Beyond them lies the capital city. I could go back anytime, start over, maybe even join the military again. But I choose to stay here. Why do you think that is?" She hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Because you're afraid," she ventured finally. "Afraid of facing the world." He chuckled bitterly. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm tired of fighting. Tired of hating. Out here, I can focus on what matters. Rebuilding. Surviving. Living." For the first time, Luriel felt a pang of envy, not for his simple life, but for his ability to let go of anger. How could someone who had lost so much still find peace? And why did it make her feel so small? Their conversation ended abruptly when a distant rumble caught their attention. Both turned to see a shadowy figure approaching on horseback, clad in dark armor. A bounty hunter. Panic surged through Luriel as she recognized the insignia emblazoned on his chest plate. It marked him as one of the Empire's most ruthless trackers. "We have company," Cale muttered, his tone grim. He grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a stack of hay bales. "Stay low." Luriel's heart raced as the rider dismounted and began scanning the area. If he found her, it wouldn't just be the end of her mission. It could mean war. For once, she didn't care about her pride or her title. All she cared about was staying alive. "What do we do?" she whispered urgently. Cale met her gaze, his green eyes steady despite the danger. "We run." Without waiting for her response, he grabbed her hand and sprinted toward the woods, dragging her along. Branches whipped at their faces as they plunged deeper into the forest, the sound of hoofbeats echoing behind them. Luriel stumbled, her legs weak from days of inactivity, but Cale kept pulling her forward, refusing to let her fall. When they finally collapsed behind a cluster of rocks, hidden from view, Luriel gasped for breath, her body trembling. Cale leaned close, his voice barely audible. "You okay?" She nodded, though her mind was reeling. This human, this farmer-turned-soldier, had risked his life to save hers. Again. Why? What did she matter to him? Before she could ask, Cale pressed a finger to his lips, silencing her. The bounty hunter was still out there, searching. For now, they were safe, but for how long? As they sat together in the freezing cold, Liriel realized something unsettling. She trusted him, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice, and perhaps, deep down, that scared her more than anything else. This segment builds tension while deepening the emotional connection between Liriel and Kale. Their bond grows stronger as they face external threats, setting the stage for further character development. Let me know if you'd like adjustments. The bounty hunter's search continued for hours, his movements methodical and relentless. Liriel and Kale remained hidden among the rocks, their breaths shallow as they listened to the distant crunch of boots on snow. Every sound felt like a hammer striking her chest. Each step closer was another reminder of how precarious her situation had become. Finally, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest, the sounds faded. Kale waited a few more minutes before cautiously rising to his feet. "He's gone. For now," he whispered, offering a hand to help Liriel up. She hesitated before taking it, her fingers brushing against his calloused palm. There was something grounding about his touch, even if she hated to admit it. For someone who claimed to despise humans, she found herself relying on him far too often. When they returned to the cabin, exhaustion weighed heavily on both of them. Kale immediately set about reinforcing the doors and windows, bolting everything shut. Liriel watched silently from the corner, her mind racing. The encounter with the bounty hunter had shaken her, not just because of the danger, but because it forced her to confront truths she'd rather ignore. "Why did you save me?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was softer than usual, almost hesitant. "You could have handed me over. You'd have been rewarded." Kale paused, turning to face her. His expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Sadness, maybe, or regret. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything," he said finally. "And I don't wish that on anyone, not even you." Her throat tightened. She wanted to snap back, to remind him that she didn't need his pity, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she looked away, focusing on the crackling fire in the hearth. It burned steadily, unbothered by the chaos outside, a stark contrast to the storm raging within her. For days, they stayed indoors, avoiding unnecessary risks. During this time, Liriel began noticing small details about Cal's life, the way he patched his clothes instead of replacing them, the careful rationing of food, the faint scars on his hands from years of hard work. Each observation chipped away at the walls she'd built around herself, forcing her to see him not as a human, but as a person. One evening, while Cal was tending to the fire, Liriel decided to test him. "Tell me about your family," she said abruptly, surprising even herself. He froze, the poker clattering to the floor. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, he began to speak. "They were farmers, like me, my wife and daughter. They didn't deserve what happened to them. Your people destroy our colony without warning. They never stood a chance." Liriel's stomach churned. She knew exactly which attack he was referring to. It had been one of her early campaigns, a mission hailed as a victory back home. At the time, she hadn't questioned the orders. Now, hearing the pain in Cal's voice, she couldn't escape the weight of her guilt. "I'm sorry," she murmured, the words barely audible. Cal stared at her, his green eyes piercing. "Sorry doesn't bring them back." "No," she admitted, her voice trembling. "It doesn't. But I wasn't given a choice. None of us were." His gaze softened slightly, though his tone remained firm. "We all make choices, Liriel, even when we think we don't." That night, sleep eluded her. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling as Cal's words echoed in her mind. He was right. She had made choices, terrible ones, and tried to justify them with duty and honor. But now, faced with the consequences of those decisions, she couldn't deny the truth any longer. The next morning, she ventured outside alone, needing space to think. As she wandered through the snowy fields, she stumbled upon an old storage shed half buried in drifts. Inside, she found relics of Cal's past, photographs, trinkets, and journals belonging to his late wife. One entry caught her eye. Asterisk, war changes people, but love can heal even the deepest wounds. Asterisk. Tears blurred her vision as she realized what Cal had lost, and what he still held on to despite everything. Love wasn't weakness, it was strength. Something she had forgotten long ago. When she returned to the cabin, Cal was waiting. Without a word, she handed him the journal. He flipped through it, his expression softening as memory surfaced. "You're stronger than you think," she said quietly, meeting his gaze. "I hope someday I can be half the person you are." For the first time since they met, Cal smiled, not bitterly, but genuinely. And in that moment, Lirael understood. Redemption wasn't impossible. It started with admitting fault and hoping others might forgive you. This part delves into Lirael's growing self-awareness and guilt, deepening her connection with Cal while maintaining tension and emotional depth. Let me know if you'd like tweaks. Days turned into weeks, and the fragile peace between Lirael and Cal began to solidify. Though their bond was still unspoken, it grew stronger with each passing moment. They fell into a rhythm of sorts. Cal tending to his farm, Lirael helping where she could, her initial reluctance giving way to quiet determination. For the first time in years, she felt something akin to purpose. But the universe had other plans. One evening, as they sat by the fire sharing a meal, the faint hum of engines broke the calm. Both froze, exchanging wary glances. "That doesn't sound like a bounty hunter," Cal muttered, rising to peer out the window. His jaw tightened as he spotted ships descending from the sky, their sleek designs unmistakably Velarri. "They found me," Lirael whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. She knew what this meant, not just for her, but for Cal and his village. The Empire wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone harboring a fugitive princess. Before she could react, Cal grabbed her arm. "We need to leave. Now." She shook her head, panic rising. "No. If I run, they'll only follow, and they'll kill everyone here." "Then what do you suggest?" He snapped, his voice tinged with frustration. "Surrendering isn't an option either." Lirael clenched her fists, her mind racing. There had to be another way, a chance to protect the people who had unknowingly sheltered her. Then it hit her. "I'll go with them," she said firmly. "Alone." Cal stared at her, incredulous. "You really think that's going to work? They'll execute you on sight." "Maybe," she admitted. "But if I face my father directly, I might have a chance to explain, to stop this madness before it escalates." He hesitated, searching her eyes for any sign of doubt. Finding none, he sighed. "Fine, but I'm coming with you." "No," she protested immediately. "This is my fight, Cal. You've done enough already." "And you think I'll let you walk into that alone?" he countered, his tone leaving no room for argument. "If you're serious about making things right, then you'll need someone watching your back." Reluctantly, she nodded. Together, they prepared to confront the inevitable. As they stepped outside, the Imperial ships loomed overhead, their shadows swallowing the snow-covered fields. Soldiers disembarked, weapons drawn, their expressions cold and unwavering. "Princess Lirael," one officer barked, stepping forward. "By order of Emperor Thalric, you are under arrest for treason." Lirael raised her chin defiantly. "Take me to him. I have something to say." The officer hesitated, clearly unsure how to proceed. Before he could respond, Cal stepped beside her. "She's not going anywhere without me." Tension crackled in the air as the soldiers trained their weapons on him. Lirael placed a hand on his shoulder, silently urging caution. "It's okay," she murmured. "Trust me." With a curt nod, the officer signaled for them to board the ship. As they ascended into the sky, Lirael couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking straight into a trap. Yet, deep down, she also felt a spark of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, she could change her father's mind. When they reached the capital city, the grandeur of the Valeri Palace struck her anew. Towering spires gleamed under artificial sunlight, and crystalline gardens shimmered with ethereal beauty. It was a world apart from Cal's humble cabin, yet she found herself missing its simplicity. They were brought before Emperor Thalric, who stood atop a dais overlooking the throne room. His golden armor gleamed, but his expression was grim. "Lyriel," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment, "do you know the penalty for betrayal?" "I do," she replied steadily, meeting his gaze. "But father, listen to me. Humanity isn't our enemy. They never were. This war has been built on lies, fed by fear and mistrust. We can end it together." Thalric's eyes narrowed. "And what would you have me do? Bow to humans after everything they've done?" "No," she insisted. "Not bow, but understand. If we continue down this path, we'll destroy ourselves. Is that truly what you want?" For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Then, slowly, Thalric turned his attention to Cal. "And you dare stand alongside my daughter, a human?" Cal met his gaze without flinching. "I stand with her because she's willing to fight for what's right, something your empire seems to have forgotten." Thalric studied them both, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "Very well. Prove your worth, Lyrael. But know this, if you fail, neither of you will survive." As the guards led them away, Lyrael allowed herself a small smile. The battle ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it, not as a princess bound by duty, but as a woman determined to forge a better future. This segment introduces high stakes while emphasizing Lyrael's growth and her evolving. The days following their audience with Emperor Thalric passed in a blur of preparation. Lyrael and Cal were confined to the palace, their every move monitored by imperial guards. Yet despite the oppressive atmosphere, they worked tirelessly on a plan to expose the truth about the war and humanity's innocence. They knew this was their only chance to prevent further bloodshed. Lyrael spent hours poring over classified documents stored in the palace archives. With Cal's help, she pieced together evidence of manipulated records, falsified reports, and propaganda campaigns that had fueled decades of hatred between the Valeri and humans. It was all there, hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy and lies. The Empire had orchestrated the conflict from the start, framing humanity as aggressors to justify its own expansionist goals. "This is it," Lyrael whispered one night as she spread the damning files across a table. Her violet eyes burned with resolve. "If we can show this to the Council and the galaxy, we might have a chance." Cal nodded, though his expression remained grim. "It won't be easy. Even if your father lets you speak, half the council will try to shut you down before you finish." "I know," she admitted, "but I have to try. For everyone who's suffered because of this war, including us." Their opportunity came sooner than expected. Emperor Thalric summoned them to the Grand Hall, where the Imperial Council had gathered for an emergency session. Nobles and diplomats filled the chamber, their murmurs echoing like distant thunder. At the center stood Thalric, his golden armor gleaming under the light of suspended crystal orbs. "Begin," he commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. Taking a deep breath, Lyrael stepped forward. Every eye in the room turned to her, some curious, others hostile. She activated a holographic projector, displaying images of destroyed human colonies, intercepted communications, and forged treaties. As the evidence unfolded, gasps rippled through the crowd. "These are not the actions of savages," Lyrael declared, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "These are the consequences of manipulation, of lies told by our own leaders to justify conquest. Humanity is no more guilty than we are. We have been pawns in a game designed to divide us." Angry shouts erupted from the council members. Some accused her of treason. Others demanded proof. But Lyrael pressed on, her determination unwavering. Beside her, Cal stood firm, his presence lending her strength. Before the chaos could escalate further, alarms blared throughout the palace. A squadron of rebel Valeri soldiers stormed the hall, led by General Veros, a rival of Thalric who sought to seize power. Chaos erupted as guards clashed with insurgents, forcing the council into disarray. Amidst the confusion, Cal grabbed Lirael's hand. "We need to get to the broadcast tower," he shouted over the din. "If we can transmit this message galaxy-wide, it'll reach everyone, even those loyal to Veros." Together, they fought their way through the melee, using whatever weapons they could find. By the time they reached the tower, both were battered but resolute. Inside, Lirael activated the transmission system, broadcasting the evidence to every corner of the Empire and beyond. As the truth spread, reactions poured in. Some hailed her bravery, others condemned her betrayal. But the tide was turning. Across the galaxy, people began questioning the narratives they'd been fed for generations. Back in the throne room, Thalric confronted his daughter. "You've risked everything," he said, his tone a mix of anger and pride. "What now?" Lirael met his gaze without hesitation. "Now, we rebuild. Together." This segment delivers high-stakes action and emotional payoff while setting up the resolution. Let me know if you'd like any changes. The broadcast reverberated across the galaxy like a shockwave, shattering decades of propaganda and lies. As the truth unfolded on screens and holograms from bustling Valeri cities to remote human settlements, reactions varied wildly. Some celebrated, embracing the possibility of peace. Others resisted, clinging to the hatred they had known for so long. But one thing was undeniable. Nothing would ever be the same. In the aftermath, Emperor Thalric faced immense pressure from both his council and the public. The revelation of the Empire's role in manufacturing the war left him politically weakened, yet he refused to step down. Instead, he announced an unprecedented decision. Lirael would succeed him as ruler, not just of the Valeri Empire, but of a united coalition between their people and humanity. "This is your future," Thalric told her privately, his voice tinged with resignation. "If anyone can mend what I've broken, it's you." Lirael accepted the mantle with quiet determination. She knew leadership wouldn't come easily, especially alongside Kale, whose presence continued to spark outrage among traditionalists. But she was ready to fight for a better world. Together, they began dismantling the systems that had perpetuated division, replacing them with policies rooted in cooperation and mutual respect. Their coronation ceremony took place months later, held not in the opulent halls of the Valeri Palace, but aboard a neutral space station symbolizing unity. Representatives from countless species gathered to witness the historic event, including former enemies who now saw hope where there had once been only despair. As Lirael stood before the crowd, her silver hair adorned with a simple circlet, she felt a surge of gratitude for Kel, for her father's reluctant support, and for the countless individuals who had dared to believe in change. When she spoke, her voice carried clarity and conviction. "We have spent too long building walls instead of bridges," she declared. "Today marks the beginning of a new era, an era defined not by fear or mistrust, but by understanding and collaboration. Let us honor those we've lost by ensuring their sacrifices were not in vain." Beside her, Kel watched silently, his green eyes filled with pride. Though he still wore the scars of war, both physical and emotional, he had found purpose in standing beside Lirael. Together, they represented a bridge between two worlds, proving that even the deepest divides could be overcome. After the ceremony, the newly crowned queen retreated to a private balcony overlooking the stars. Kel joined her moments later, leaning against the railing as they gazed at the vast expanse of space stretching before them. "You did it," he said softly, breaking the silence. "You changed everything." She shook her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "We did it. None of this would have been possible without you." For a moment, they simply stood there, side by side, letting the enormity of their journey sink in. Then, Turning to face him, Lyrael added, "Do you remember what I swore all those months ago? That I'd never take a human as my mate?" Cale chuckled, raising an eyebrow. Hard to forget something like that. Well, she hesitated, her cheeks flushing faintly despite herself. "I think it's time I reconsidered my stance." His expression softened, surprise giving way to warmth. "Are you sure about this? Being royalty isn't exactly easy." "Neither is being human," she countered, her tone teasing yet sincere. "But somehow, I think we'll manage." As they shared a quiet laugh, the weight of the past seemed to lift, replaced by the promise of a brighter future. Far below, ships bearing the flags of both Valyri and human factions drifted peacefully through the void, a testament to the power of forgiveness, love, and hope. And as Lyrael intertwined her fingers with Cal's, she whispered a vow to the stars. No more walls, no more hate, only unity. This final segment wraps up the story with resolution, hope, and a touch of romance, leaving readers with a sense of fulfillment and optimism. Let me know if you'd like any tweaks,